Hi, my name is Constant Brand. I'm here from the European Environment Agency's communications team, and welcome to our EEA AskAnExpert today. And today we are joined by our EEA Executive Director, Leena Ylä-Mononen. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you started your job in June last year here in Copenhagen, coming from Finland, from Helsinki. And we thought today that we would talk with you and discuss a bit about your experiences so far in your new job, and also what you see as the priorities for the EEA and for the European Environment Network and on environment and climate in the year ahead. So before we start our discussion here today, you're welcome to post your comments and questions in the slot below our live feed, and we'll make sure our executive director sees them, and hopefully we can get through them all today. So let's start a little bit on the on your new role as executive director. How do you see that role?
First of all, it's a real honor and a privilege to be leading this agency. And it is, of course, also very exciting times. Our agency has been growing thanks to the European Green Deal and the new tasks and responsibilities given to our agency. And, of course, also the data and knowledge that we are gaining from environmental topics, is increasing. And now, of course, we are approaching the European elections, another very exciting topic, and the new policy cycle. And we are also approaching at the same time the middle of the so-called pivotal decade. 2030 is approaching, and we still have a tiny chance of actually mitigating climate change so that we could limit the global warming to 1.5 Celsius degrees and halt biodiversity loss. But we are also seeing that there are other topics that are now gaining, let's say, importance on the policy agendas. There's war in Europe and elsewhere as well. Citizens are concerned about the costs of living and jobs. Farmers have concerns. Competitiveness of the European businesses is increasing of importance. So the landscape is changing.
Yeah.
And evolving. So how I see my role, first of all, is of course internal and external. So towards the agency and its staff, it is about articulating a vision, giving a purpose and direction to our staff, and also in this changing landscape. It is also about embodying our values, transparency, professionalism, respect, trust, positivity, and openness. So. Of course, it's also about creating a working environment where our experts, our staff can do their work, even thrive in their work. So accomplish the work program that we have. Then I have the external role, of course, and it is important to note that we are not only an agency, we are indeed, we have the marvelous network of experts and institutions, the IONET, and the member states. Their experts is really important for us. They are our closest partners, and of course, really contribute to our work. So I see my role as taking care that this network can flourish and also deliver. And naturally, having a really good and open relations with the Commission services, especially DG Environment and DG Klima, the policy DGs, our partner DGs, it has to be a priority for me. And then we have a wider let's say partner network, our sister agencies, other DG services, and of course then the even wider stakeholder audiences and the other European institutions with which I have to also build relations. And I hope that I can build indeed, on the already existing relations, but also strengthen the relations with our partners and stakeholders. And this is also meaning that I'm sometimes called to be the spokesperson of the agency, even if I'm not an expert in the field.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What are your key interests in terms of the climate and environment issues?
My background is in the chemicals policy,
okay.
And I'm passionate about circular economy, but I think my interests are wider than that, all those individual topics. I think the most important is the connections between the different environmental topics, also between environmental topics and societal economic topics. So really how everything is connected. I believe sincerely that we need a holistic approach. We are facing indeed, a triple planetary crisis. So the climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution is still also an issue. And we have to find solutions that are actually bringing co-benefits, and at least we have to minimize the trade-offs between these different solutions. So it is really challenging, but it's also really exciting. And my education background back in the years, I mean, that was a holistic, let's say, general environmental protection background.
Because before this post, you worked in the Environment Ministry, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, in Helsinki.
Yes.
Yeah. So you started your job in June last year, and can you explain to us a little bit your experience so far here in Copenhagen? And because you've also been to Brussels many times and other places as well.
Yeah, it is my second expat experience, and of course Denmark and Copenhagen is a great place for a Finnish person to be. It's not too far, it's not too different, but it's still a very, very great place to live and work. And of course our agency, I mean, there has been a warm welcome both from our management board and from our staff and our stakeholders. And of course it has been very busy also in terms of learning our business, the topics that are now really important. So yeah, it has been exciting, but also a very positive experience so far.
So the EEA has 32 member countries, plus 6 cooperating countries. It's a huge organization and network. Can you explain a bit the visits you've had to member countries so far?
Indeed, I have made a commitment to visit all our our member countries and the cooperating countries as well, if possible. It is, of course, very challenging, and so far I have managed to only visit 2.5. I started visit in Finland, in my own home country, and it was very effective. I mean, couple of hours visits, but really important also to meet the IONET partners in that country. I didn't even know all of who are in Finland working in this IONET network, and also meeting the ministry people. So it's a really great short visit. Then I had the opportunity to have a country visit in Malta, where we had at the same time in back-to-back the IONET NFP meeting. So these two countries have had a proper country visit, and then Belgium, which is of course, I mean, now also having the presidency. I had a meeting with several partners there in the autumn, and looking forward to the next ones, Germany, at least Austria as well this spring.
Okay, and how important is the EEA's European Environment Network for the agency?
As I said, it is really the sort of in essence for the agency. We have also joint strategy, EEA IONET strategy for the next 10 years. So it illustrates how important it is that we are working together with the member states and their experts and institutions. They, of course, I mean, bring the data and the knowledge from the member states, feed it into our reporting systems, and then, of course, provide also the experts for analyzing and building our knowledge products. We have also the European topic centers, I mean, which also play a crucial role in delivering our data and knowledge. And of course, they are all very different. They come from rather different circumstances, and this is really, of course, important for the European level policy making to understand what are the differences and priorities, circumstances in different member states. So we can also feed that into this European level decision making.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what sort of feedback you've received from the countries, what they see as the EEA's role in the knowledge provider and helping policymakers.
I have been very pleased to see that there's really a great audience, both in the member states and in the EU institutions, I mean, for our knowledge products and data and information. Of course, I think we can also do better. We can also improve that all what we do is known, or in the member states, in the institutions, and that they are more and more relevant. And of course, I know that we are doing already a lot to make also smaller briefings. I mean, to target it, we are having data on country-specific information, which is of course, I mean, of interest to especially the member states. So we are developing how we can even more effectively and efficiently work on topics that are then of most relevance to the member states.
What other stakeholders are you focusing on? You have mentioned building ties with the European Parliament, the Commission, non-governmental organizations, citizens, business.
Yeah, it's a wide audience and they are quite different. So of course the EU institutions, especially of course the Commission, I see them more as especially DG Environment and DG Climate, more as a partners than stakeholders. And the European Parliament, of course, there's a very special relation with especially with the ENVI committee, with our agency. So, but then there is this wider audience, and indeed, I think our agency could do better in reaching out also to not only to the green NGOs, but also to the business associations at the European level, those who want to see the sustainability transitions moving ahead and accelerating. And of course, we should also do even better to reaching out, if possible, to the European citizens directly. This is a challenge because of the language and many other reasons, but also to provide information that is of interest to let's say, every citizen. Especially challenging is to really now find the right way of working. It of course takes some resources to reach out to wider audiences, but we are open to speak in different events organized by stakeholders and seeing how we can build together a stronger network.
Mm-hmm. Just interrupt you there shortly, just to remind viewers that if you have comments or questions, please note them down, and we'll make sure we get to them as soon as we can. I already have a question here from Rosano. Seeing what happened during the last few weeks, what do you think went wrong with the rural world that brought such risky hostility trying to implement some changes in agriculture and forestry environments?
It's of course easy to be giving advice from outside and afterwards. I mean, but I think what is in essence is that we need to indeed listen and understand, have a dialogue, a proper dialogue with the societal partners like farmers, different businesses, those who, workers, those who are being affected heavily, and not only by the triple planetary crisis, not at all, but also on the pollution crisis that we are experiencing, the war, the economic crisis, energy crisis.
Yeah.
So there are many issues that the different sectors, like farmers, for example, are experiencing, and understanding their reality is of course important for those who then try to find the right measures, right way of formulating European policies. We have a role of providing knowledge, and we are happy to serve in that role. If our data and knowledge is helping in formulating the better policies, and of course also in this dialogue that I believe is crucial.
Mm-hmm. And of course there's a lot of debate, discussion on whether or not climate change and environment should continue to be a top priority in Europe. Are you confident this will continue to be the case?
Well, I have to be. Working in this agency and seeing how little time we have to solve the really serious, I would say, existential issues of climate change, biodiversity loss, also pollution still being pestering also in Europe, lost lives and livelihoods, threatening us. So I believe it has to stay there, but of course the emphasis or the nuances may be now different because of the geopolitical and other things that are happening around us. So of course the politics and policies have to react on what is happening around us, and we cannot close our eyes that there is indeed a very different situation than 5 years ago.
Indeed, yeah. Thank you. The questions are coming in thick and fast. So from Matthew, you mentioned the triple crisis. What would it take to achieve sustainability? Are European efforts enough?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Thank you. European, I think, efforts are already good on the good way. I think the European Green Deal has made really a difference. One could even call it as a transformative agenda towards the sustainability. It was able to put the links and the sort of connections between the different issues. Okay, implementation is still a big thing.
Yeah.
Now we have adopted a lot of legislation, and whether that all can be implemented properly in time, with sufficient resources in member states and of course in other partners, that is yet to be seen. Globally, yes, we have even bigger challenges. I'm aware that on this week and next week, there's the big UN Environment Assembly meeting in Nairobi, and they are having a lot of serious issues on their agenda. And of course, we are also playing our part in those issues. and of course global, climate change is a global issue, same with the biodiversity, although it's also very much locally, resolved. And of course pollution, many of those topics are also very global actually. Plastics, for example, to be mentioned.
Yeah, yeah. And on these challenges you face, how is the EEA supporting the institutions and member states in this regard?
Our role is in particular to provide data, information, assessments, and knowledge. So we get the data from the member states. We via their reports, we analyze it, we publish it, we make it available, and of course what policymakers usually need is a very brief summaries, the key messages, and this is what we try to rehearse and become even better to have snappier, more palatable and also actionable messages from the science and knowledge that we have.
Mm-hmm. Another question here from Adrian, a familiar name. Thank you for hosting this event and for the work that the EEA does. It is incredibly useful for cities. What scope do you think there is for further developing city-specific data or greater collaboration with cities?
I think we are doing already quite a lot it comes to my mind on the air quality and the access to green spaces. We have, this great atlas, environment and health atlas, which is already giving sort of visibility at the city level. We are now in this spring also publishing on the I think urban adaptation, and resilience towards the climate change. Mm-hmm. And here I believe, especially on this topic, climate adaptation and the societal resilience, preparedness, cities are in a prime role. So yes, we can also improve, I believe, our work and how we collaborate with that level. Then there is of course the regional level and the national level, and we hope to be playing a part and that our data is relevant for all these actors.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, cities are playing a bigger role because of the impacts. So many people living together in a small place. The climate risks that the EEA will be talking about in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be launching our climate risks assessment. Looks at those aspects as well.
Yes.
And you've already presented some of the key findings to EU ministers.
Yeah, and the key message is that we have a lot to do in order to prepare our societies at all levels towards the new climate. Meaning, in the best case, the 1.5 degrees global warming. But of course, Europe is warming even quicker, and we already see the extreme weather events, floods, drought, forest fires, many of these issues that are going to get even worse if we don't manage to limit the global warming.
Mm-hmm. Again, if you have comments or questions for our Executive Director, please don't hesitate to drop them down, and we'll make sure we get to them. We have some time left. It would be interesting to know what you think are the differences between your job here and the job you had in Helsinki.
Of course, working for a ministry in a member state is a quite different work. There the focus is indeed, influencing and taking part in the negotiations on environmental legislation, which mostly is nowadays done in Brussels. Then of course there's the national implementation, and of course a room for maneuver for member states also to put in place their own legislation and systems and provisions. So the focus is very different and very much nationally focused, although nowadays of course every member state, including Finland, are actively engaged in not only in EU work, but also in more international and regional cross-border work. So the focus is certainly different, but of course the same ideas that our decisions and policies should be knowledge and science-based. That is the same. So I see that also indeed ministries in member states can benefit from the information and knowledge that we are producing here in the agency. Mm-hmm. Topics are the same, of course. They are climate change, circular economy, pollution prevention, all those. I was working also in Finland.
Mm-hmm. And to what extent does the national level, in your experience, use the data from European data? Do they look to other member countries to compare when formulating national policies? Or?
It's quite typical that a small country like member state, like Finland is looking at what are the neighboring countries or European countries all in all doing. And of course our role is also to help to share the best practices and information how neighbors are doing. So typically in the formulating legislation, you have a section on also what are the solutions found in other countries. So yes, the data of the EEA is also being used by Finnish authorities in designing and implementing the policies.
Talking of data, and we had some breaking news last night out of Brussels. Of course, there was a provisional agreement on the new ambient air directive between the EU institutions. I was wondering, since the EEA, we do play a big role in providing air pollution, air quality data to the member states and EU policymakers, what your thoughts were on the changes that are coming.
It was a good news, really. I'm really happy to hear that the solution, the agreement was found. And it's great to see that, I mean, EU is also moving towards the WHO standards on the air quality, maybe now with the pacing, but we need to really, I mean, go towards what the science tells us is the sort of more safe levels. We are having all too many, I mean, let's say preventable deaths and of course diseases and loss of working days, etc. With the air quality that we have still in many cities, many regions in Europe, and even best. I mean, those countries who are doing best. I mean, they have. I mean, also situations or areas where the current limits are being exceeded, and they are not yet at the level of the WHO, the World Health Organization. So we all can do better on the air quality.
It remains a problem and a challenge, but we've made a lot of progress.
Yeah, and the good news is there now that we are moving ahead.
Yeah, that's good. Perhaps we could talk also a little bit about cooperation with other agencies. What interactions have you had with other agencies so far?
It was 2 weeks ago. We had the heads of agencies meeting,
Okay.
the big one in Brussels. It was my first one, and it was great to see that, yes, we have, of course, a lot of topics of common interest that sort of more administrative and financial aspects. But there are also topical, I mean, cooperation. We are now working very closely with our sister agencies under the so-called European Parliament ENVI committee. So we have EFSA, the Food Safety Agency, we have the Chemicals Agency in Helsinki, my previous workplace as well, ECDC, the Diseases Agency in Stockholm, EMA in Amsterdam, the Medicines Agency. So we are working also under this umbrella of One Health more and more closely. And there is also now, of course, even legislation or let's say provisions that we need to work together. For example, on this One Substance, One Evaluation aspect, and also chemicals indicators is one concrete area where we are working.
And we are working, I believe, with ECHA, the Chemicals Agency, on a new report and briefing that's coming out.
Yes, it should also be coming up this spring.
And also with the maritime transport.
Then we have indeed, I mean, also new work. I mean, not new, totally new work, but I mean, continuous collaboration with Maritime Safety Agency on the maritime sector's sustainability transition. Really a great work. MTER report coming also out. There was a stakeholder consultation last week on that. And I think I'm forgetting many of them. We are working with Eurofound, so CDFOP, I mean, also on those older agencies where they're working, especially also with the tripartite, so the social partners context. So it's also a great promise that we can work, I mean, across Europe between the agencies on the common topics.
It's certainly reflecting how environment and climate issues are really crossing. There's no more silos of these policies anymore.
Well, I think there are still some silos, but I mean, yes, I think there's an acknowledgement that we have to work across the traditional borders. Yeah. Yes, the green transition, the challenges that we have are touching everybody and all the sectors.
Mm-hmm. And for instance, like the way the EEA has now stepped up our work in the area of health. Mm-hmm. And you know, we've got reports and studies on cancer and the impacts air pollution on vulnerable populations and so forth. So that really touches on a broader, more
environment and
impactful
health issues is one example. Yes, and this One Health umbrella is a great invention, I believe. And of course, after Corona, we understand also how, indeed, I mean, less understood issues like biodiversity loss is affecting our health.
Mm-hmm. And perhaps another question, what citizens can do. We get that a lot in our dialogues and outreach. and in the inquiries we get from people around Europe and the world. What can citizens do to make a difference or systemic change that we need?
Before that, I would remind that every adult citizen has a vote, both in the national and local elections, but also in the European elections. And the European elections are approaching 9th June or 9th and 10th June. So it's really important that those citizens that believe that these topics need to stay at the high on the political agenda go and also give their vote. So this is the principle of the democracies. Then, of course, individual citizens can do a lot. We are all producing a lot of waste. We are consuming. So, of course, checking our individual patterns. How do we move? How do we clothe ourselves? Or what kind of food we consume? All that is important. Although it may sound tiny and small, actually there is evidence also that businesses are reacting to citizens' pressure on moving towards more sustainability. So it is important. And then, of course, one can also take really an active part in local environmental groups or associations. And hopefully also all citizens who are interested find our website and the knowledge that we have there.
Definitely. We just have a few minutes left, so if you still have a quick question, now's the time to get them in. Otherwise, I would ask you a personal reflection, a question. Where you see the agency in 2030? Where do you see the agency going in the years ahead?
We are still indeed growing and gaining importance and new tasks. I hope that we have been able to really, through our 5-year reports, which the next one is due 2025 autumn,
the state of the environment,
environment and outlook of European environment, to really bring up the knowledge to those who are making and forming the policies for our future, so that we also are understanding better the links between how just transition can happen in this environment of triple planetary crisis and the polar crisis. So I hope that we are having played a crucial part in gaining sustainability by 2030. It is a big challenge, and there are many, let's say, clouds on the sky, unfortunately, at the moment, but we do our best.
Okay, I can sneak in one more question, a bit on European nature restoration law. There was a lot of fuss amongst farmers, Finland included. What are the pros and cons of the nature restoration law? Is it fair? How do we work together towards the same goals? So we touched briefly on that at the beginning.
Yeah, and of course, usually, it's not our role to comment on something that is still even now in the political decision making. So I believe that the vote is approaching in the European Parliament. But of course, we need something like this in order to really not only protect the protected areas, but also restore nature so that we can halt biodiversity loss in Europe. It has to be, of course, balancing then with other interests, economic, farmers' interest to continue their business, but we can also find, I believe, solutions that are co-beneficial, where one can still, also have a thriving biodiversity and cultivate, have the food security and other needs of our society. It needs some work and some collaboration, some dialogue and good guidance and implementation in the member states.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you to the viewers also for your time and for watching us today. Our next EEA Ask an Expert is coming up as well. We will talk about the externalities of industrial pollution, so stay tuned for the announcement on our LinkedIn page. In the meantime, thank you very much again to our Executive Director and to you for watching today. See you next time.